Joining us here on the Voice of Job Seekers. The holiday edition is this week is a major holiday,
Mhm.
and I'm glad that you're able to join us. I'm sure some of you are beginning to take off for the holidays, and that's a good thing, right? You're driving, and maybe you're driving through 12, 15 states. Who knows what you're going to come across as far as weather is concerned? Here in the Midwest, is kind of crazy. It's dark and it's raining, it's cold, it's awful. But I'm glad you're able to sit down with us to have a chat and join some forum discussion on job search, and hopefully this will help you to be a better job seeker, a smarter job seeker. Of course, I want to welcome you to the Voice of Job Seekers once again. And first off, I was going to introduce Jack. You know Jack a lot, but you know Kirsten too, the Uber talent acquisition leader. How you doing, ma'am?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for being on with us. And of course, Jack Kelly. You
Hi.
know Jack.
You know,
How's it going, Jack?
to be very transparent, when you talked about the holidays and travel, as
Yeah.
a dad, as a parent, my daughter's going with her boyfriend to their parents for the holidays, and they're
Okay.
up all the way in Massachusetts, and we're down here all the way in New Jersey. So I have to now worry about driving safely and making sure they go there. Everything is okay. So I think she left a couple of hours ago. So I have like 3 more hours to worry and have to hope everything is okay.
Is it
But
raining there?
it should be. Yeah, it hasn't started yet, but I'm looking out the window. It looks like it's going to rain here, and they're
Yeah.
calling for a lot of rain. But it's funny. It's let's be honest. This is like a parent thing. You know what I mean? It's like this is part of life, right? Where you got to
It
factor in
is,
these
but
things.
you
Yeah,
get used to it.
yeah.
My my youngest son doesn't travel as much as my
Mm.
oldest does. My oldest one is the globetrotter of them all, and I've stopped worrying about it. It's just like whatever it is going to be.
Mm.
So, but I too understand that girls are a little bit more different. They're a little bit more precious to dad, and so this tends to be a little bit more. Um, there's heartstrings
You
attached
know,
to to the
it's
daughter.
interesting though, Mark. Yeah, yes, but she's like gung ho on stuff, which is actually gets me more nervous. Like, you know what I mean? She's like, oh, I was driving. It was so great. I'm driving 70, 80 miles an hour and listen to music. I'm like, what? Like, you just started driving. Don't be driving 70 miles an hour. Stop that. Just, go 60, go 55. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's how it is.
Yeah. Well,
Welcome
starting, Kirsten. I see you
to
making a face, but
adulthood.
when you just start, they're starting. It's not like she's been driving for
Oh,
years, really. This
got
is
you.
like,
I understand that
yeah,
part. Just
yeah,
Yeah.
starting out, but
yeah.
as someone who, uh, got my driver's license in New Jersey, you can't get your driver's until you're 17.
Hmm.
So that was my senior year of high school, and then I went to college a few months later, and then I didn't drive for the beginning of my freshman year. I didn't drive because I didn't have a car at school, and then coming back and then going back and forth to Richmond
Yeah.
sophomore year, junior year. So I
Mm.
understand that, but yeah, you telling them to drive 55 miles an hour on a Thanksgiving weekend is not going to get you there.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. The holiday season, everybody's trying to get to where they're going. So I
Yeah.
understand. I get it.
Just be
So
real, right? I'm being.
yeah,
You asked
yeah,
how it is, so like I
yeah.
figured, hey, why?
I
I have
get it.
no qualms about being honest and saying, hey, this is what's on my mind, because I think most families and people go through this stuff, and in a way, it's related to the job search too, because whatever it is, there's always things in the background that are on your mind, right? That always
Hmm.
take over whatever you're doing. You're maybe looking for a job, looking to advance, but there's always in the back of your mind 10 different things going on, like,
Yeah,
what do I got? What I got to do this is happening. I'm worried about such and such.
yeah. It's important to be present.
Yeah.
when you're driving. At least if you can't, you won't be able to control anything else but the car at the moment you're driving.
Yeah.
So, she'll get used to it and she'll be fine.
Oh, she
You
loves it.
know,
Yeah, it's
good
yeah, it's the parent.
good thoughts and positive thoughts
Yeah.
being sent your way. Okay, so let's get it on with some discussion here. First of all, let's talk about the job search in some generalities. And I know some people are kind of caught between the holidays and wanting to continue the job search. So, what are some quick wins that you guys can, you know, give people to get them started or for them to continue on with the job search if they're in that situation?
Well,
I'll start with you, Kirsten. Go ahead.
well, first and foremost, don't put your job search on pause right now. So many other people are going to put their job search on pause, which gives you kind of an advantage, so to speak, because while the new positions that are being posted may not be as abundant right now, the
Hmm.
people that are applying to them has gone will go down significantly because a lot of people think, well, there's no hiring going on in the holiday season, so they kind of put their search on pause. Also, there's seasonal work, and just because it's not in your desired role, it's not your desired role, doesn't mean that you can't, use it to keep your transferable skills sharp, keep your transferable, maybe even strengthen one that you had. When I was in between consulting jobs back in, I think, 2017 or 18, I think it was 2018, I took a job part time, just helping my friend at church. They're a
Hmm.
pastor, and I was writing, I was doing the Sunday bulletin. I was, keeping up with some of the data and pulling their membership records together, like doing all the stuff that I know how to do. um, but it helped me in creating content for Trap Recruiter and for other things because I got comfortable, and I got a lot of more practice in Canva doing, making the announcements and making these graphics and things like that. So always do that. And then volunteering. I know so many people, and I'll say this every time. I know people who have gotten jobs from non-paid work, and I don't advise this, but if you have some time, I know people that have been recruiters that have gotten laid off, and then they've gone to their local community college, or they've gone to a community organization, or they've gone even to just like volunteer their time to do something, and that's turned into a
Hmm.
position. So just utilize all of your resources, utilize your network. And this is not the time to necessarily like put a full stop and a full pause on your job search.
Right, right. I agree with those,
Yeah,
Jack.
I agree with her. It's um, as Kirsten was saying, this time of year, a lot of people just tap out of the market, which is not a good thing to do because, you know, if you're in it, you're going to stand out because there's going to be less competition.
Hmm.
And you're getting out there, you're
Right.
sending out resumes, maybe getting some interviews, some informational interviews, and you also you're staying sharp. You're keeping in. I'm a big believer is that like an object in motion stays in motion. You know that you got to keep going and keep with the momentum, so that if all of a sudden you
Hmm.
do a dead stop and then a week goes by, 2 weeks, and then before you know it, hey, I'm going to wait till after the holidays. Oh, I'm going to wait till after the new year, and by then everybody else is flooding right back into the market all over again, and the competition
Right.
is heated. um, I will offer this one thing. I'm slightly getting optimistic. I don't want to be saying, hey, everything is better, but it seems like the Fed is not going to kind of keep raising hikes. They may even cut the interest rates. It seems that
Hmm.
the stock market, which is not the be all and end all, but it's a forward looking mechanism, how people think the economy is going to be, and it's been going up higher and higher for a while. So it looks like the investment world is feeling confident that things are going to be looking better in the near term.
Hmm.
So it went from a lot of doom and gloom to at least now it's seeming a little better. I mean, we still have to worry about all the debt the U.S. has, but fortunately, I'm hoping that coming into the new year, that maybe the jobs are going to loosen up. Maybe there's going to be more confidence out there, that companies could feel more confident to start actually hiring and doing something instead of just dragging their feet and cutting
Right.
costs. So I'm trying to be very optimistic here.
No, I think there's reason for optimism for the fact that, we're not in a recession yet, or that this promise of a recession that keeps looming over and keeps threatening direct ways could happen. And it hasn't happened because this was the year that, it was doom and gloom and that didn't happen. So that's very important to think about and know as people go along. But volunteering is definitely one that I had on my mind for most as well. I think in terms of volunteering as soon as you possibly can, and hopefully people who've had long gaps are already doing that, or people who just became unemployed right away, just to kind of be able to keep your mind sharp, to keep your possibilities open as far as meeting people, and then even keeping your skills sharp if you happen to use those skills that might be newer to your life and to your profession, and that you might be able to use in a very productive way. So I think those things are very important. I would say even continue to look at different areas where you might be needed. Just don't look at one industry, and just don't look at all the industries at one, but kind of look to see where you fit in each industry, and consider those as possibilities, because you'll have more options if you have a certain skill set, and it might fit into hotel as well as tech, as well as publishing, as well as something else. So take all those considerations, but just be more skill centered as opposed to just trying to find a job. So that way you can not only leverage that in that particular industry, but it might set you on a new career path that might be more fruitful than the last. So I would say continue to now that we do want to move on some let's go to topic number 2. Christmas, as we talk about the holidays, September, definitely we didn't have the September surge. So I don't see a lot of job postings that are kind of unique to Christmas, other than the usual retail stuff that we usually see in UPS and FedEx. They are always hiring. But are you guys seeing that maybe Christmas is hitting a little bit different than it had in the past? We'll start with you, Jack.
That's a good question, because about this time of year, you start seeing, all the Christmas decorations, and, Amazon's going to hire 5 billion people, and UPS hired, trillion
Right.
people and all that. I really haven't seen those headlines as much, but I imagine that's going to be happening, and that's going to take place. I think also, you know what it is, and this is going to sound crazy, right? Because I have no data to back this up, but
Mhm.
I think as humans, we don't want to kind of keep going in the same direction. Meaning that if for the last year and a half, particularly for like white collar professionals, it's been kind of doomy and gloomy, right? And I
Mhm.
think after a while, we're like, you know what, enough with that. We got to turn it around. It got to be better. And it's almost like this collective thought process, like, you know what, things are going to get better. Think about it. So far in the Middle East, right, with Hamas and Israel, it looked like it was going to be like dragging everyone into World War III. Didn't
Right.
happen, right? And now they're trying to negotiate stuff
Not
out.
yet, anyway.
Oh,
Mhm.
I'm taking the optimistic side, so I'll just
Right.
focus on that.
Go for it.
I'm just trying to be
Absolutely.
positive. And then I look at Ukraine, like we don't hear about anything anymore, so it doesn't look like we're going to be drawn into World War III over there. So I'm hoping
Mhm.
that for this holiday season, it starts that trend. Like, hey, you know what? We've waited for like almost like 2 years of just just being in a weird spot, no growth, cost cutting, slow hiring, lots, continual layoffs. And perhaps by getting the holidays, all of a sudden that's kind of the benchmark that changes it. That's you start getting in a better mood because it's the holidays, you're happier, you see family and friends, you get a good vibe. And a lot of these things are psychological. So then once,
Mhm.
people start getting in a better mood, they're willing to spend more, they're willing to travel more. That stimulates the economy. The economy is doing better. So then people are like, oh, wait, this is great. So companies feel confident to hire, and you get this positive
Mhm.
virtuous circle. So that's what I'm shooting for. I'm hoping that that's how it's going to play out.
Yeah, yeah. I think that all those things are in the back of people's mind. Of course, you're reading LinkedIn, you're seeing a lot of your network commenting one way or another about it. I try to stay with it because stay away from it because I'm not ready yet
Mhm.
to dive into that topic. But I will say that I just don't. I don't know. Maybe it's just me not watching as much TV or not watching the news as much or not reading, what I
Mhm.
usually read as much recently. It does seem like it's hitting a little bit different because it seems as though we used to hear the calls for jobs and the things for what to do. And there used to be a loud call was turned now to like maybe a whisper that there are some opportunities, just maybe not in the usual sectors that they're usually available in. Kirsten, have you anything particular?
Yeah, I'm not seeing as much, as many seasonal opportunities. I mean, we have to be. While I'm not trying to be doom and gloom, I'm going to take the realist approach, as and not the
Okay.
fully optimistic,
Well, which is good though, because this
Jack
way, like,
approach.
it's good. You
But
get
I mean,
different.
we have to be honest. Like,
Yeah.
seasonal jobs, a lot of times we're like Mark said, like in retail, even in restaurants, filling in for people who were going to take extended breaks during the holidays.
Mhm.
You might have third party companies, bring it temp agencies or whatever we want to call them, providing
Mhm.
those filling in those gaps for folks who were, like I said, going to be taking off, going to be doing whatever, or there's maybe a little bit more work that needs to be done, getting files straight. And if we're talking about white collar positions, getting files together, closing out some accounting issues or whatever the case may be. But I'm not seeing as
Mhm.
many of those on the retail side. Obviously, I mean, look at if you go in any mall, like there's no stores open right now. Like people aren't shopping the way that they used to, so they're not.
Right.
Hours are changing. Big Black Friday used to be a huge deal,
Mhm.
um, to the point that stores were opening even on Thanksgiving Day. Now your big box stores are saying no, we're not going to do it. They barely have cashiers to work, or they
Right.
they they're doing other things because I tell people all the time, like I'll stand in the line because I don't work there. And that's no disrespect, and that's no gripe against people who work as a cashier. But like, if you're getting paid to do that job, I'm going to stand in line and wait for and you know have my things checked out by you. I'm not going to the self checkout. I didn't come there to do that myself. I could have bought my stuff online.
Mhm.
So
Self checkout
Yeah.
no,
king.
I'm not doing it. I don't work there. I don't work there.
I'm with you,
Like,
Yeah.
Kirsten. I hate the self checkout. It's like, pay me to
I
do it,
I mean, because you
right?
guys,
I
like, let's be
If I'm going
honest.
to do it, pay me.
You guys know what,
because so
yeah,
many
and you
people.
guys know what I buy, and I have to wait
Yeah.
for someone to come and check my ID. That's all I'm gonna say. So,
Yeah, I guess okay. I guess if you have to have your ID checked,
I
then
have to have my ID
I
checked.
get it. I
So
get it.
yeah, I'm going
Yeah.
to the real line. But I was saying, like, I do think it's going to be a little bit different, and I've even seen like Amazon closing down some warehouses, so they're not even hiring
Yes.
as many people as they used to. Um, Now, what does that mean for 2024? And even, you're saying bringing opportunities to connect. Um, this time, um, pre-pandemic and even last year, there will be an abundance of holiday party invitations.
Hmm.
You're already got your schedule, you already got your calendar or where you're going, where like there's not a lot of companies that are
Mhm.
doing these huge, enormous, holiday blowouts anymore. But
Hmm.
I think bonuses are going to be different. And some of that is because a lot of these organizations have experienced layoffs, and it doesn't look good, to spend
Right.
all this money on certain things. And people still haven't fully come back together in an office setting. You still have people who don't want to travel um, to the office for whatever reason. They're co-located and all of these things. And I think the connections going forward are going to be, a mix between the companies that are insisting on return to office, the companies that are, trying to fill their office buildings back up and then really get right sized, because even the roles that are open, their salaries are not consistent with the growth that we've seen before. And
Hmm.
people are like, well, why would I take take a job paying, X amount, and I have to be in the office, adding, costs for travel, adding costs to feed myself, taking away time from my family, taking away time from me doing other things. And people are negotiating in negotiating those things a little bit differently. So I think it's going to be a minute before we're back to like this the holidays being like a season of abundance and a
Hmm.
season of a lot of choices. I still think it's going to be some time.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of with you. And I thought about, as you were talking, I thought about hospitality. They're still hiring. Retail, a lot of them are still hiring. Uh, there's a lot of those that are still, looking for people. They're still short. You're still waiting a little bit longer at the restaurants and all. It just is. I do think that the areas that are growing that I've seen recently, manufacturing is growing, but just growing a little bit differently in ways that it hasn't in the past. I've seen the sustainability sector grow because there's more green jobs depending upon where you live. If you live in the western part of the states, not Chicago, where there's very little sun during the winter, but where there's a lot of sun, I think there's a lot of jobs in those what they call green job areas. But I think a lot of it is just getting for people to get acclimated in knowing what where the jobs are and look a little bit harder, not just look at if there's a job, but where there's a job and where you could fit in, like I mentioned last time. But to mention that people aren't going to have parties when half the staff are only coming into the office. I think of when I went to visit LinkedIn for an event, and they had only less than 50% of their workers in the office. Why throw a party for 2,000 people when only 800 people are going to come to the office, right? Then, of course, people had layoffs. And of course, the layoffs didn't bring a whole lot to celebrate. And who feels like celebrating when their favorite coworkers are gone, or when the company said we're going to cut back, and then you're going to have a Christmas party? That would look a little weird too. So I definitely feel like it's going to look a little bit different. It may be a couple of years before it actually looks like a real Christmas rush again. Maybe it just is going to be more. We'll know more December 26th when Christmas is over, and that second day, which is, I guess, December 26th, is the biggest shopping holiday outside of the day after Thanksgiving, where it's Return Day. National Return Day is December 26th, also my birthday. Thank you very much. And it's just, we'll know more. And those stats will come out, and how things will definitely, maybe it will even out. Who knows? But this was good for us to talk about, and I think people need to go in kind of looking both ways before they cross into job search traffic. Let's talk about number three. And Jack, this is the first time you used the word lies in your live stream yesterday. You wouldn't let me use it. You said omissions. I'm going to say, well, this one you use lies. Well, I've always said companies
Yeah.
lie. So I think, although some people will always say, well, this is the way it's always been. Well, doesn't make it right.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean that it should be acceptable, right? So, Jack, I think some of that premise, and I'll let you kind of rip off of that first, since that was kind of something you made a whole show out of yesterday.
Yeah, because like you definitely when in my opinion, what happens sometimes, particularly when, as Kirsten, you're talking about that, and Mark, you're talking as well, where the times aren't that great. There's a lot of bad news out there, a lot of kind of angst and worry, particularly, both for job seekers, workers, and companies. And then when you have that, when it's bad times, sometimes people do bad things because they feel desperate to get things done.
Hmm.
So that and let's say for a company, if they want to hire, well, maybe they're not going to tell the whole full story because they got to get somebody in that seat. They don't care who's in that seat. So they're going to tell a nice tall tale about how everything is wonderful and the boss is fantastic and the company is amazing and the benefits are great and there'll be a big bonus. And then it turns out
Hmm.
none of that happens. It doesn't happen.
Right.
I'll be polite. They exaggerated, but really lied about everything. So when it comes time for the bonus, they're like, what bonus? We didn't promise you any bonus. And you're like, but yeah, you absolutely did. Oh no, I don't remember that. And it's unfortunate, where you'll have the recruiters who are desperate and got to get someone in there. So they tell a tall tale of how wonderful things are. And then it doesn't turn out. So you have to, even though people are looking for jobs, you just have to have your antenna up and be careful. And you have to ask
Hmm.
these like tough questions just to make sure that they don't say like, oh yeah, don't worry, trust me, it's going to work out. Oh, I know it's not in the employment contract, but oh, trust me, you're going to get that bonus, you're going to get that raise, you're going to get that office, you're going to get that remote. Of course it'd be remote. And then because it's not in writing, then it turns out you don't get any of those things. So it's definitely it's almost like there's a caveat emptor, like buyer beware. So when you're looking around, definitely to keep your eyes open and make sure that if you could get it in writing, that's the best thing to do, because this way you can prove it and say, hey, wait a minute, you said I could work remotely, and here it is in writing, and I'm
Right.
going to hold you to it. As opposed to they just verbally say, oh yeah, it could be remote, and then we've all seen this. Okay, everyone get back to the office. And it's like, wait, what happened? What do I do now? I took my
Right.
Well, I relocated and I took my kids out of a school and put them in a new school. And now I got to just take them out of school again and move again. That's so unfair. So those are things that
Yeah.
are they're bad. That's really terrible that these things do happen.
Yeah. Now, Kirsten, are the HR minds playing tricks on us,
Yeah,
or
it's
is it
exactly what Jack
are they
said.
strategic?
As he was like I said, I was just thinking, get it in writing. Whatever
Right.
they're promising you, get it in writing. Just like you said, that's the only way. Like, be specific, and ask the right questions. And like I said, if they promise you something outside of what their normal is, get that added to your offer letter or your employment contract. However, whatever you're signing your name to, get that in writing, and you're covered.
Now, Kirsten, what do you think about this, especially with AI now, right? Like there's so many different AI platforms out there. So you have your agreement, right? You're going to hire Mark, right? And here's the employment agreement and all that stuff. Usually it's boilerplate. But now with AI, you could just kind of change it and just say, okay, I want remote. So let's just put that in there now. And you can do it so quickly.
No, 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 no. It's not that.
Oh, it is that easy. You could do it. We could do it.
Time out, time out.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's the way that people were hoping it would work that way.
No,
But in reality, the sky is still gray.
yeah, like before that offer can be countersigned, it has to be signed by the company. So the company is providing you with the offer letter. You know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
there's so many addendums, there's so many clauses. Everyone is not in every letter, so they have specific legal compliant language that they have to use. And I don't know too many. I hope y'all aren't doing this. Please don't do this. I hope y'all aren't throwing that stuff in AI and say rewrite it, because that's not how it works.
Right.
And again, if you're a prospective employee and you have taken your offer letter and ask AI to rewrite it, and then you sign the Evelyn, like, don't do that either. Like, that's a that's
Well,
a
Just change it
lie.
on your own.
That's a
now
deception, and
that's
that's a delusion in and of yourself. So don't do that. Please don't do that.
right. Yeah. There's somebody who's probably already tried it and
Good
failed already.
luck.
But from the other side is that perhaps for a company to use AI, it takes having you'll have a lot less dialogue with somebody going back and forth. I mean, you don't think it
Yeah,
would
I don't
happen,
think the offer
but the
letter is
purpose
something.
is for to you.
I don't know any companies, I don't know any recruiters who are using AI for offer letters.
I don't think I knew that in
Yeah,
that
so
respect, but I'm saying though that I'm just reimagining here. Just reimagining
mm-mm,
in the sense that
no.
they can use that. I'm not agreeing with that either, but they can use it. They use it for the front parts of interviewing already.
Well,
Understand that people to get over the hump to
messaging.
skirt some
Yeah.
budget costs, that people are companies especially are going to start getting very creative in their use. And I'm just saying that in my creative mind, and probably somebody out there, there's ways to take some of the emotion and human contact out of it
Mm.
by using AI in a way to there might be some customization and there might be some customization that's impossible for AI to use. So I understand from your point of view, you say, no, we're always there'll be a human contact all involved.
I don't
But
think
I'm
that
just
you can
saying,
take the
what
human
if?
contact out of, well, first of all, you can't take the human contact out of recruiting. You just can't.
Okay.
And number two, and anyone who tries to do it, congratulations, good luck. You're going to have problems with retention. You're going to have problems with um, attraction. You're going to have problems with. Uh, you're going to have problems. Yes, you might be doing things quicker, but I think you're going to be doing them more often. Meaning, yeah, you can get your job out quicker. Yeah, you can get your interview scheduled faster, but are you having to interview 27 people instead of 3? Are you having to refill these roles every 2 months or every 2 weeks because you keep making bad hiring decisions because you're not making the
Aren't
decision.
we?
You're relying on an algorithm or you're relying on predictive analytics to make a decision. Like there's certain parts of the recruitment process that you cannot take the human out of. Like yes, data is great. We need it. We need it to predict outcomes. We need it to make decisions. However, there still has to be a human mind that's analyzing those things. There still has to be a human mind that's deciding what is and what is not the correct thing, and it has to be customized for the person that you're interested in hiring. I don't think that there's any way. I don't think there's any way that you can ever, like I said, take a human out of a hiring process.
Yeah,
It
I
just
don't
won't
think,
work.
see, with
Well,
the AI, I don't think the idea is necessarily to get the humans out of it. I think give you an example. I've been demoing a number of different AI recruiting platforms, and it does seem that it's going to be a combination of the technology and the human. So, for instance, like a lot of how the ones that I've been playing with is that you could use the platform giving prompts, having really good prompts, and having AI driven recruiting platform where you could find the
mhm.
people super fast. And so I envision what's going to probably play out is that maybe you'll have some younger people who are really good at doing all these prompts to find out the right kind of person that the hiring managers want and HR want and talent acquisition want. But then
Mhm.
once you get those resumes, to your point, Kirsten, that's where the human comes in, because you can't have an AI kind of usher them through the whole interview process. You need that human being to help out and work with the candidate and, help, what they should say, what they shouldn't say. So I think it ends up being like a little bit of a combination between the two.
Oh yeah,
And
I 100% believe in high
yeah,
tech and high touch, and I
yeah.
definitely believe in utilizing AI and AI tools. We've
Mhm,
been like, they are not new. We've been using them. We've
mhm,
been using them for sourcing. We've been using them to give us reports. We've been using these things. However, there are now more sophisticated tools, whether they are specific to one task or one section of the recruitment process, or they're
Mhm.
all encompassing. Like I said, like there's tools like Chronify that help you with scheduling. Like that's needed. Those are
mhm,
those are the parts of the process that can be taken away, that can make things more efficient, that can cut back on
Mhm.
time. But with that time, you're giving it back to the human being so that they can be more high touch, so that they can be more focused and more deliberate and more empathetic and just better at doing their jobs. Like if I only have 8 hours in the day, but six of
Mhm.
those I'm chasing down people's schedules, those last two
Mm.
hours, something's going, like my
mhm,
candidates are going to suffer. Somebody's going to suffer, you know? So when it's something like that,
Mhm.
yes. But when it comes to like negotiations, I believe in prompts for things, especially from a candidate or from a job seeker perspective, like how to ask for things, like or even for a recruiter or a company, how to deliver, how, what's a better way to phrase or message something so that it doesn't sound so harsh, or so
Mhm.
that I'm not mincing words, or so that I'm not, you know, sugarcoating something, like what's the most
mhm.
like diplomatic way to say something. Like I believe in using it for those things, but I don't believe in like pressing a button and thinking that that's how you get people hired. And with the offer letter, the AI in the offer letter is okay, this is a software engineer coming into this role in this department, and it's determining here is where they should fall in the salary range as it relates to other people. Like this is the equitable salary. This is the typical
Mhm.
bonus. These are the standard days off. And there will be an if and, like if these criteria aren't met, what other controls need to be in place, what concessions need to be made, what exceptions do I have to get permission for, what exceptions do I need to get approved to offer them 25 days instead of 20. You see what I'm saying? Like there's only so many things that AI can do without a human being deeply involved. So that's my only.
Mm. Yeah, and I think in turning that around, in retrospect to all the points that you made, Kirsten, is the idea that job seekers need to take more of their emotions out of the process as well, especially when it comes to negotiating and responding to something that they don't want to hear, or responding to something that's not good enough.
Yeah.
A lot of times people become too involved with their emotions and it fogs their thinking, instead of being more objective and responding a lot less emotionless. I'm not saying without emotion, but a lot of times, it is kind of, playing chess, in
Yeah.
essence.
Like,
Is,
listen,
you're,
help me
yeah.
understand the
Yeah.
benefits, because even the benefits administrators don't understand the benefits that they're
Mhm.
offering. When you
And
ask
that's
when you ask a recruiter
the
what percentage
strategy.
of my salary goes into the, like, we're like, come on, dog. We have our little sheets. We have our sheets with, again, predicting what people are going to ask based on past experiences. Like we give you a little thing and we go through our checklist and you'll pay this much a month if this, if that. But there are, like I said, I would love to see, and there's probably some out there. I just haven't looked them up, but there's probably someone who's already made prompts for, discussing your healthcare benefits, or how to have the conversation around your particular, say your accommodations. Say you need accommodations and you don't even know how to broach that conversation, and or you're dealing with someone who has never had to negotiate that type of thing, or doesn't have the language to understand why you need these accommodations. You see what I'm saying? So there's a lot of things that we could be using it for, as opposed to, like taking away steps. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I think in essence, a lot of people don't interview with somebody who's seasoned enough to have a crib sheet of responses. Most people interview. Most people have interviewed with people who are just as bad at interviewing than the person who's being interviewed.
True.
So you got two very bad situations. Most people don't have that. So I think one of the considerations and all that is that everybody's still fumbling through this age-old, thing that we've been doing for many years now. And nobody said, man, I went to a great interview training as a manager, and I probably heard maybe everybody I've heard maybe 3 or 4 people. I was fortunate enough to have some training when I first became a first line supervisor. I had some training. It was great. And I had a mentor to kind of lean on.
Mm-hmm.
But even at that, when you move on and you move on positions, that territory becomes a lot cloudier, and you still need that training to be ongoing. Having said that, is that, and job seekers need to realize that person across from you probably knows much about interviewing you do. It's going to be who's going to be the better communicator ultimately, and who has the best information go forward to be able to leverage a conversation to possibly go on to the next round. So it's everything.
To go back to when you made a really good point about the emotional aspect, because I found out over the years that's a big challenge, I would say, for the vast majority of job seekers, because it's so easy to say, hey, it's only business, don't take it personal. But it's hard for you know what I mean? They do take it personal. And
it is personal.
And it
is.
Yeah.
That's something is.
And I find out that's what I think a lot of times where job seekers, let's say if they're not going through a recruiter, they're doing it on their own, they end up sabotaging themselves, but not on purpose, because it's a very awkward conversation. So let's say Kirsten's going to be my boss, right? It's weird. Now I got to negotiate with her, who's going to be my boss. And if I push too hard, she's going to think I'm a jerk. But then if I don't push enough, I'm going to get lowballed. So it gets you in this really awkward spot. And then emotionally, sometimes, especially now when you see these salary ranges, right? They'll give it's laughable. We've all it's like a meme to this point, right? It'll be like, from 50,000 to 500 million, it's like ridiculous. But let's even take a normal, all right, from 100,000 to 200,000. So a candidate will anchor themselves closer to 200, even if they're not really there. But then if they get an offer lower, then emotionally they're like, what? How dare you? You don't believe in me. And I can empathize with them to a certain degree. You know what I mean? And that's I don't know how to take care of that, because that I've seen since I started recruiting, for 20 plus years. It's very hard for people to distance themselves. Like if you're a recruiter from the outside, right, Kirsten, you could appreciate this. You could kind of it's not you, so you could kind of be more cerebral about it and not get as emotional involved. But when you're in the heat of that moment, it's really hard for them, and that's something we don't talk about enough, where things get blown up because it's just they feel they're being taken advantage of. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. And then to your other point, Mark, which is really smart, there's freaking no you'd never hear, you're exactly right. You never hear, oh, company ABC has a program for anybody who's hiring how to be a good interviewer and hire manager. I have yet to see. Now they
Mhm.
may exist, but
They
I've really never
definitely
seen that. Like a really hardcore program so that anytime an interviewer gets out there, they're really good at it, or a manager is really good at that whole process. But oftentimes they're not. So then it's just really, this is why you get all these people who are so angry when they're interviewing for a job, because you could
Right.
tell like the people who are running it, they haven't been trained to kind of really do it the right way. And I'm generalizing, right? It's not every single company, not every single person,
Right.
but it's enough that you just see anyway. You go on LinkedIn and you'll hear every day people complaining about these things, you know?
Well, I've worked at large
Mhm.
organizations when I was in corporate, and we always like that was for like first line leaders. It was always part of your first line leaders course. If we
What would they do, by the way? So like, what would, I don't mean to, like how, like
You
what
had
kind of
interview
training?
training, you had training on how to write requisitions,
Mm,
you had training on like how to do, conflict resolution in your team, how to have conversations about performance reviews, how to do and conduct performance reviews, like how to write them, how to
Mhm.
deliver the message. But what what came later was that, especially for anyone, I mean, we see now, especially when we're having interview teams, a lot of times, if it was the person whose name was on, responsible for making the hiring decision,
Mhm.
who had to have the training. Like you couldn't get access to the applicant tracking system until you completed these steps. You know,
How long would those training? How long would that take? Like those
I
different
mean,
training
there
modules?
It depends. Like they sometimes they were just online. Sometimes
Mhm.
they were a notebook and you were like kind of, checking off that you did it. Again, sometimes they were part of an external, not an external, but like outside of the hiring process,
Mhm.
part of a frontline leaders class. You just had to say, yes, I've already done this thing. Um, they weren't updated as much as they should be, and as Mark pointed out, they weren't ongoing, and a lot of times people that were going to be part of the interview team, they didn't necessarily, it wasn't necessarily a requirement that they had to be a part of those, had to be a part of those conversations.
Mhm.
And they were more so for compliance, like the types of questions that you can't ask, how to do behavioral
Yeah.
interviewing. Don't ask people how
Mhm.
much they weigh. Don't ask people how many kids they have. Don't ask people where they're born. Like it was those legal questions. It was more of like a do's and don'ts, and that evolved into more of the behavioral thing. And then, like I said, it became a, a step in getting access to the recruiting system. And you know what happens when you don't have access to your recruiting system? Why didn't you open your requisition? And now your boss is like, you got these jobs open, we're losing money. This is it becomes a revenue issue. So,
Mhm.
it was that was the case. But I can understand how some smaller organizations don't necessarily have those mandates, or have access to those tools. Um, and then who's
Right.
to say that they're even good? Because where'd you get that interview training from? Did you buy it off the shelf? And it's like one of these old school, like they still doing those cartoons where it's like, "Hello, Nancy, this is Bob." You know how we had to take sexual
Yeah.
harassment training. We had to take, um, you know, where don't open these
Mm.
attachments. If you get an attachment from, "Hey, what's your name?" or "Hey, I'm going to give you $1 million," don't open it. Like
Mhm.
that's how like basic these kinds of things were. So yeah, I mean it's out there and it's available, but that's another way for AI to make, to elevate, those types of trainings and those offerings, and make the organizations better, and benchmark, the level of interview, acuity. Is that the right word?
Yeah. Because think about it, then the outcome is from all this, you have these cliche kind of questions that really, in my opinion, really don't move the ball forward.
You're
So
right.
tell me about yourself. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
It
What,
it
Yeah.
that was and I find that interesting that you should say that because I was thinking about a lot of people who do take the courses. I was fortunate to be able to get feedback
Mhm.
from my participation in these courses and things like that. So at least when you went, you got the training, and then you got got a chance to, participate in the discussion or take a small test, but then also get the feedback for saying, well, we see you here, or you're really this way. I remember one time I was told that they said, you're really a tough interviewer. I thought I was the lightest person in the room. but the feedback came back that I was the toughest person to deal with in an interview. It's like, and that made me change some things around. Had I not had that feedback, I could have possibly, and maybe before I did, had that feedback repelled people more so than make them more interested and make them more engaging. So we can go around and around with this, and one of these days maybe we'll have to come back to this. But
well, can I just
go ahead, Jack?
With the feedback, Kirsten, I'm curious about your from your experience, because what I find out is that when I first started recruiting, feedback was just taken for granted. You get feedback and constructive criticism to the candidate to help them get better. Now it's very rare. I mean, and then I think if you don't give feedback to candidates, then how, it's hard for them to then improve when they're going through the whole interview cycles. Like, what have you been seeing in that? So I'm glad you brought that up about the feedback, Mark. Like, Kirsten, what are you seeing?
I always elicit feedback,
Mhm.
and not whether it's on an actual interview evaluation or in an email. Like, I want it in writing, and I include those notes as part of the employee, and part of the candidates, their record. That feedback is important, and I provide them with anything that will help them. I'm not going to tell them. I mean, every hiring manager is not going to give the best feedback. Every hiring manager is not going to be like, some are going to say something like incomplete answers, and it's the recruiter's responsibility to probe the same way that the hiring manager or the interviewer should have probed in the interview to get a more complete answer. It's up to the recruiter to probe and say, well, what do you mean by that? Can you give me an example? Can you provide me with more details? Because I want to be able to give this back to them. And giving folks that like, it really helps them a lot. Like, I give feedback on folks on folks' resumes. Like, I've told candidates, I can't, I especially if I talk to them. Like, if I see something in their resume and then it's a matter of like something simple, like their format or they misspelled something, like that's an easy fix, But if I see that they have the skills, and then I'm like, okay, let me just talk to them and see what it is. And then when I talk to them, like they just didn't do a good job of explaining themselves on their resume, I give them that feedback and say, hey, before I submit you to the hiring manager, I need you to go back and put these things in there. And when you have a recruiter that's dedicated to you like that, which, again, you and I, Jack, we've both been doing this for 2 decades plus. So those of us that are career recruiters, like, we're doing that and we're giving people information. Now, I can't give every person that I did a phone screen with in-depth information, especially if you didn't make it past the phone screen. I can say, I can, the most in-depth I can give you is why we didn't select you, or why we selected someone else. They more closely were aligned with X, Y, Z, perhaps you can come back, and look at these positions, whatever case may be. But I don't always get to give, I think the expectation is that, if there were 10 candidates, that I'm going to be able to give 10 candidates all of that information. No, I can give 10 candidates feedback. Absolutely. And I'm going to, but perhaps only the top 3 are going to get that additional, like, yes, more feedback. What can you do better next time? What really stood out? What was great? And I always start with what was great before I give them what needs to be improved. Because I think they need to know that. And then some people have a bad day. Like everybody, some people have a bad day. When it's a matter of what I call a matter of taste, like, they wore white shoes to the interview and it's after Labor Day. Like, knock it off. Like, what does it have to do with your like, what does it have to do with their job? And I would tell, like, I have told hiring managers, do not write that down. I'm going to tell you this right now. Don't write down anything that's discriminatory because we're going to have a problem. And I'm going to tell them.
Well,
and I'm going to
this-
tell on you.
Yeah, as always, as I expected, this turned out to be a great discussion. We didn't even get to topics 4 and 5.
Oh, wow.
But no, this turned out great and actually went past what I thought we would go. Thought was going to go 45 minutes, but this actually turned to a whole. I'm gonna have to make
That went
last
quickly. I didn't
part.
realize that.
I know, and that's why I love doing these. It makes things go quickly. You're not depending on one person to give one answer, and then you're kind of interacting and giving feedback to everybody else. So this was fantastic. We just got 2 shows out of this.
I really
not
think we
just
need to do a
one.
whole interview show.
Well, yeah, I love the interview shows, but the panel shows are where it's at.
No, I'm
because
saying a
really
show
this,
on interview, like interviewing.
Oh,
Sorry.
well, I have to
Like what best practices kind of thing?
I'm
Like
gonna hold
how
you
to.
to that. I'm gonna hold you to that, Kirsten. You got to come back and do interview.
I'll
show with
moderate
me. Oh, you're moderator. Okay. We can work that
There you
out. We can work that out. Thank you, Jack.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Kirsten. And of course, Kirsten, people can find you
At
where?
Trap Recruiter everywhere.
Okay. Trap Recruiter everywhere. And Jack?
You can find me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, not so much on Facebook that much.
Yeah, I'm no longer on Facebook.
Nothing against it. I don't.
Yeah.
It's just, like I'll post my articles and stuff. No one cares. But if I post a picture of my cat or dog, I'll get like tons of. So I'm like, I don't know.
That's how it is. Somebody actually, somebody who usually does videos, I forgot the name of the person. She filmed her husband with and without a beard. And that thing went crazy. She said all the other stuff I went to before, nobody, people watched, but this was the thing that went viral.
Wow.
It's like, who is this? People are interested in who people are.
People
not
love my
always
business
what they
mullet,
do.
so I can attest to that.
Yeah,
I'll write
I-
something profound, but let me put up a business
I
mullet
am
picture.
all
People are like,
into
yeah,
the
comment.
business mullet. Yes, I love that. Keep them coming, and make sure and the wine. Keep the wine coming too.
Keep the wine
There was one
coming.
wine I meant to ask you about, but I'll hit you up later.
Okay.
Anyway, if you are staying on my channel or my LinkedIn profile, I'm about to have another discussion. It's not a panel discussion. This is more of a with Kevin D. Turner. Enjoyed that show. Thank you
What's
for joining
the
me for
topic?
this show.
I'll check it out.
He's going to give us 5 tips in how to position your personal branding efforts for LinkedIn in the
Ooh.
next year in 2024.
Nice.
So stay tuned. This dude is so deep into LinkedIn. He's got like 150 changes documented just from LinkedIn alone from 2023.
He's all over that stuff.
Yes,
Yeah.
he's all over this. So I can't wait. Thank you very much for the rest of you. And thank you, Kirsten. Thank you,
Thanks.
Jack.
You're welcome.
We'll see you guys
It's
next
great seeing you both
time
again.
from the
Thank
Voice
you.
of
Take
Job
care.
Seekers.
If I don't speak to you, have a nice holiday, both of you.
Happy
Thanks.
holiday.
Bye-bye.
All right, you too.
Bye.